Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Chapter 3. Now, this chapter is near and dear to my heart because we're going to be talking about the role of advertising agencies and how organizations are organized to tackle integrated marketing communications. It's near and dear to my heart because I started my career working for an advertising agency and then worked for the Coca-Cola company in the marketing department where I worked with external advertising agencies. So it's a pretty important topic in this class. You also want to pay particular attention and pay attention all the way to the end because I'm going to be talking about the two essay questions that will be in your first exam. So let's get going. Here are the key things I want to make sure you guys take away from this chapter. First of all, we're going to talk about math men and how they're overtaking madmen. So stay tuned for that. It's a pretty interesting topic. Also, how digital marketing is changing the landscape and how agencies are having to make radical changes in how they service their clients because of digital marketing. We'll talk about how firms are, how they organize for integrated marketing communications, and we'll look at both a centralized system and a decentralized system. We'll also talk about different types of marketing services providers, which is actually really good news for all of you that are looking to graduate soon and get a job in the real world. The beautiful thing is there are so many different kinds of marketing services providers out there. It creates lots of great job opportunities for you guys. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the marketing services firm of the future. What's going to be required for firms to succeed in the future? So how many of you have watched the series Mad Men on Netflix? It's actually a great series. I loved watching it. It's based on kind of the traditional agency experience back in the 1960s or 70s. And actually, Mad Men is kind of a term used to describe the people who worked in those agencies and were responsible for developing all the great advertising that we have seen over the years. Basically, these people traditionally ruled the world of advertising. So if you want to learn more about that and have a little fun in the process, tune into Mad Men on Netflix. It's a great series. I think you'll really enjoy watching it. Now, that's Mad Men. Now, what is Math Men? Well, Math Men, think about it, are the engineers, the mathematicians, the data scientists, whose domains are computers and algorithms and big data and analytics and artificial intelligence. I mean, that's the world we live in today. And the digital revolution, so think about streaming TV without advertising. Think about all the social media sites that we all use. Well, that digital revolution is requiring marketers to rethink their strategies. It's no longer just about producing a great TV commercial and putting it on one of the big three networks. It is so much more complicated and so much more complex today. And it's requiring much more focus on detailed analytics and immediately measuring the effectiveness of digital advertising. That's what marketers are looking for today. And they're looking to use a multitude of data analytics and automated media buying services and other IMC tools. And they're working with lots of different experts in these fields. So all of this is putting a big squeeze on traditional advertising agencies, and it's forcing them to rethink the services that they provide and hiring more experts in these fields in order for these traditional ad agencies to stay competitive in the world we live in today. So it truly is about math men overtaking madmen. Now, traditionally speaking, there's basically two participants in the integrated marketing communication process. There's what we have known as clients, and there's what we have known as advertising agencies. Of course, clients like the one I worked for so long, the Coca-Cola company, certainly have the products and services, are the causes that need to be marketed, right? They provide the funds, certainly, to pay for advertising and promotions, and they are responsible for developing effective marketing programming. So clients. Now, in this class, you're going to be working with an external client, whether it's King of Coolers or the Eat Dinner Club, or maybe perhaps a local client that you identify. So you're going to be working with a client, and you're going to be pretending to be an advertising agency. Your team will be. And traditionally, advertising agencies certainly specialize in the creation, production, and placement of the communications message. And they may facilitate the integrated marketing process, right? And that's become much more important today, this idea of facilitating the integrated marketing communications process, because, again, it's much more complex than it used to be back in the day. So, again, traditionally speaking, we have two participants in this IMC process: clients and agencies. Now, in today's world, we've really moved beyond just the previous two being clients and agencies, and now there's so many other what I'll call support organizations as part of the overall IMC process, starting with media organizations. So these are those big media conglomerates, whether it's Disney or CBS or Viacom. So these are all the organizations that provide information or entertainment or an environment for a firm's marketing communication message, right? So media organizations, and those have changed over the years. It used to be ABC, CBS, and NBC, and now there are so many other media conglomerates because there are so many other media avenues to reach consumer, whether it's traditional television or radio or out of home or digital, social media marketing, et cetera, et cetera. So media organizations are certainly a growing part of the overall communication process. And then, of course, there are what we call specialized marketing communication services organizations, whether it's direct marketing agencies who clients work with to create catalogs and email marketing campaigns and other marketing campaigns that go direct to consumers, or maybe sales promotion agencies. Certainly one of the biggest, fastest growing areas is in digital interactive agencies. And then also, of course, public relations firms make up a significant piece of the pie when we're talking about participants and supporting organizations in the IMC communication process. Now, there's also these firms called collateral services organizations. So these are those organizations who provide support functions, which are used by advertisers or agencies or media organizations. And it typically includes things like marketing research or branding and package design. Certainly consultants in all facets of the field of marketing. Photographers or printers or video production or even event marketing or interactive marketing. So these are all kind of support functions to agencies and marketers that think of it as kind of enabling marketers to bring the end product to consumers. And again, perhaps the most important area, and certainly the fastest growing in terms of support functions or support organizations to the IMC process, is what we call specialized services, and the biggest one is certainly digital interactive agencies. So these are the agencies that specialize in the development and strategic use of all the different digital marketing tools that are now available to marketers. Everything from, websites, banner ads, search engine optimization, also known as SEO. Certainly mobile marketing is a growing area. And we're all familiar with all of those social media campaigns. So this, again, in today's digital revolution, this is the fastest growing area of support services for the entire integrated marketing communications process. And this will be the area for a lot of you that you will find lots of job opportunities right out of college. So let's talk a little bit about the client's role in the overall IMC process. And again, I've had the opportunity to serve as a client in two different jobs, starting at Pizza Hut, where I was in marketing on the client side, of course, and then at the Coca-Cola company for so long. So typically, the way an organization is organized for integrated marketing communication has a lot to do with the overall size of the organization, maybe the number of different brands or products that it markets. Certainly the role of advertising and promotion in the overall marketing mix is going to have an impact on how clients may be organized. Certainly how much money is allocated for marketing and advertising will have an impact. And then the overall marketing organization structure. So we're going to look at both this idea of a centralized and a decentralized organizational approach for IMC, and looking at different firms like Delta, who has one brand, right? And so they're typically going to follow more of a centralized kind of organizational approach versus a P&G, who has many, many, many brands, and they're going to follow more of a decentralized approach. And then, of course, one of our clients in this class, Kanga Coolers, very, very small company with not a whole lot of marketing money to spend. So if they even have a marketing manager, and I'm pretty sure they don't. So it gives you some idea of what can have an impact in how organizations are structured for integrated marketing communication. So here we have a typical organizational structure for kind of an advertising department under a centralized system. And again, the centralized system is typically used by brands or companies that don't have many different divisions or products or service lines or brands to advertise. So think of Delta. Again, it's one product. It's one brand. Think about Target. I mean, Target itself is one brand, and they provide, one set of services. And the same thing with a firm like a Best Buy, right? So in these firms that follow more of a centralized approach, you'll have these functional areas, so production, finance, marketing, research and development, and human resources. Those functional areas all report to the president of the organization. Now, under marketing, you may have various functions as well. So you may have marketing research, which is a specialized function. You have certainly advertising, which is a specialized function, sales, and product planning. So all of those specialized functions kind of report up to the marketing function in this idea of a centralized system. So as I just mentioned, in the centralized system, the marketing activities are kind of divided along the different functional lines. You may have different areas of expertise within kind of the overall idea of marketing. And certainly in the centralized system, an advertising manager's responsibility is for overall planning and budgeting, administering and execution of advertising, certainly coordinating with other departments, whether it be marketing research or sales. That coordination is a really important function, and also certainly coordinating with outside agencies and services. So again, in the centralized system, depending on the size of the firm, you typically have one or a couple of different advertising managers who are responsible for these specific tasks. Now, it looks a little bit different in much larger organizations who have multiple product lines or multiple brands, and this is where we typically see more of a decentralized brand management system. So we still have at the top, obviously, corporate, You still have the key functional areas, so production, finance, marketing, research and development, human resources, are the typical functional areas within big organizations. But now look under marketing. Now there's still sales, so that's still a very important function in a decentralized system. But look at the product management, and this is where you could actually have a lot of people, a lot of marketers that follow up under the brand management or product management organization, which again is a part of the marketing organization. So here you may have, 3 or 4 or 5 or more brand managers, and each one of those brand managers may be working with their own advertising agency. So rarely do you have one agency that does the work for all the brands within a major organization like a Coca-Cola. But you also have this idea of a marketing services organization. So this is where you actually could have an advertising department, several people that are responsible for advertising development and execution, whether that's sales promotion or package design or merchandising or event marketing or sponsorships. So you have those people that are responsible for very specific tactical execution. And then certainly marketing research can fall up under that marketing services as well. And in many companies, the marketing services organization or in this advertising department, they are the people responsible for working with external advertising agencies and other marketing services firms to deliver the work that the brand managers are requiring. So a much different organization. And again, this is you see this typically in really large firms that have multiple product lines and brands. So again, this decentralized system is typically seen in big companies like the Coca-Cola Company or Kraft Heinz or Procter & Gamble or even General Motors. What all these firms have in common is they have multiple brands that they're taking to market, right? And each one of those brands have different requirements from an integrated marketing communication perspective. And each one of those brands is typically managed by a brand manager who's responsible for the total management of the brand, including planning and budgeting and sales and profit performance. So brand managers typically have P&L responsibilities, and then they're working with other experts within the marketing organization of a firm or the advertising department of a firm to basically give them briefs on what they need from a marketing communications perspective in order to deliver their annual plan. And then this idea of category management. This is actually Procter & Gamble kind of created the idea of category management. And think of it as kind of an additional layer of management above brand managers, right? So in a Procter & Gamble where you have hundreds of different brands, those brands oftentimes are actually competing with each other, right? And so the idea of category management is to make sure that while those individual brands are competing with each other, at the end of the day, the totality of all those brands is enabling a Procter & Gamble of the world to achieve much higher market share than their competitors. So this idea of category management is really important for big firms that have multiple brands, certainly like the Procter & Gamble, but also firms like the Coca-Cola Company as well. Now, in some firms, they actually may have in-house agencies. So think of this as it's an advertising agency that's actually set up, owned, and operated by the advertiser, right? And so the in-house agency is responsible for developing, creating, planning, executing advertising that is going to deliver against the marketer's needs and their specific briefs. So why do some firms have in-house agencies? Well, many will argue that it reduces their advertising and promotion cost because they are saving money by hiring people that work for the company to do all the work versus going externally. it certainly allows companies to maintain a tighter control, right? So you don't have, you're not working with external people. You're not having to educate them on your brands and your processes. So it allows companies to maintain a tighter control. Typically, much more continuity of talent. Because there's very low turnover. It's one of the things about the traditional advertising agency business is you typically see a lot of turnover. So you may be working with one person today, and tomorrow that person leaves, and you've got to retrain and work with a new person. So within the in-house agency, you typically have much lower levels of turnover. Therefore, you have much more continuity. Now, some critics of in-house agencies worry about the experience and the objectivity, right? So it's almost like you've heard the saying, being too close to the forest to see the trees. You know, that can happen in an in-house agency where you're not really open to maybe new ways of looking at an opportunity or problem. You're kind of closed-minded. You're too close to the forest to see the trees, for example. And then there are companies that have both in-house agencies and they work with external agencies. And Coca-Cola is certainly an example of that. You can Google Coca-Cola Studios and you probably find the video that I've got a link to here in this presentation. But Coca-Cola Studios is an in-house agency inside Coca-Cola that does a fair amount of work for all the different brands. Now, that work is typically more focused on preparing the sales organization or creating videos and other sales aids for the sales organization. But from time to time, they will actually produce advertising that is actually seen in the marketplace. So Coca-Cola uses a combination of external agencies, but they also have their internal agency called Coca-Cola Studios. So let's take a look at kind of the advantages and disadvantages of the different approaches that we've talked about. So starting with centralized, of course, you know, the advantage there is you're facilitating communication. You've got fewer people that are kind of involved in that process, typically have more continuity of staff. And because it's centralized, typically smaller organizations, allows for more top management involvement. So some would argue those are advantages of a centralized organizational system. Now, some of the disadvantages, the inability to handle multiple product lines, right? Because you have fewer people, right? Maybe longer response time because, again, you have fewer people. And then less involvement with an understanding of overall marketing goals. Again, because you're typically looking at smaller organizations, those are some of the disadvantages of a centralized approach. Now, decentralized approach, certainly the advantages, you have much more concentrated managerial attention, right? Typically a rapid response to problems and opportunities, again, because you have more people, and also increased flexibility, right? And now some of the disadvantages of a decentralized approach, maybe ineffective decision making, right? The more people you have, the more decision makers you have. Sometimes that can get cumbersome, right? And it can take a long time to reach consensus. There can certainly be internal conflicts, right? So when you're Procter & Gamble and you've got multiple brands that you're responsible for, you know, what one brand is doing may disrupt the sales of another brand within their own company. And so you can see internal conflicts from time to time. Internal rather than external focus. And this is, again, this idea of being too close to the forest to see the trees. That could be considered a disadvantage of the decentralized approach. And then, of course, in-house agencies, again, most marketers have the reason most marketers have an in-house agency is because of cost savings, and they're able to maintain more control, increased levels of coordination, much more stable, as we've talked about, and then kind of that access to top management, or it's really the reverse, top management having more access and more say in what goes on from a marketing and advertising perspective. Now, the disadvantages of in-house agencies, generally speaking, you're getting less experienced people, more junior, right? Because again, companies are hiring more junior people because they're trying to save money. So you're getting less experience, more junior people. Perhaps less objectivity, again, maybe less flexibility, and then less access to top creative talent. I mean, the best creative talent out there is typically not going to go to work for one company where they're working on kind of one industry, so to speak. So those are some of the kind of advantages and disadvantages of kind of all three approaches: the centralized, the decentralized, and then of course in-house agencies. Now, we've talked a lot about advertising agencies. So again, what is an ad agency? It's simply a service organization that specializes in the planning and executing of advertising programs for its clients. Now, one of the biggest things that's been happening in the advertising agency industry is this idea of consolidation. While there are thousands of different small advertising agencies here in the US, there are really 4 superpowers or super agencies, if you will, around the world. So these super agencies are large agency holding companies that have merged with or acquired other agencies and marketing services organizations. And these super agencies have now evolved into the 4 major agency holding companies out there. And these holding companies, these 4 super agencies, they now account for more than 50% of the U.S. agency revenue. So this is where it's all gone. Consolidation into these 4 big super agencies. WPP, Publicis Group, Interpublic Group, and Omnicom are those 4. So again, there are still thousands of independent small agencies out there, but these big 4 agencies have bought up a number of those smaller agencies and consolidated into becoming these 4 massive super agencies that kind of dominate in the world of advertising agencies today. So here we have a typical organization structure for what's referred to as a full service agency. So this is an advertising agency that performs all the different services that a marketer might need. And so typically there's obviously a president and maybe a chief operating officer or chief financial officer at the top. But then you have these 8 different areas of functional expertise, starting with kind of the director of client service. And when I was in the agency business, I was always in this client services functional area. So you have a director of client service who's responsible for the overall relationship between the agency and the client. And under that director of client service, you may have several different account directors or account supervisors, or kind of the entry level would be account executives or assistant account executives. And actually my first job was an assistant account executive, and then I rose up the ranks. And my last job in the agency world was the director of client services role for the Joey Ryman agency. So I've always kind of been in that director of client service functional area. So again, client services responsible for the overall relationship between the agency and the client, and really kind of planning the work that is needed between or for the agency to deliver against the client's needs. You may also find a director of planning or research, really responsible for more kind of strategic thinking, marketing research. So really diving deep to understand the needs of the clients, and more importantly, the needs of the consumers that the clients are trying to reach, and to kind of help the client strategize on what's the best approach to create a sustainable competitive advantage in the marketplace. So under that kind of director of planning research, you may have account planners, and certainly this is where you would find marketing research experts. Now, creative services director, this is many people would argue this is the most important role within an agency because advertisers are typically hiring agencies for their creative output. So yeah, a pretty important area. And this is where you will find art directors and copywriters and graphic designers and studio artists. So this is where you find those experts who are expert in creativity and creative output. Right. So all of you who have a creative bone in your body and you're thinking you would want to be a copywriter or an art director or a graphic designer, this is where you would find yourselves in traditional agency organizational structure. Now, in today's world, interactive, digital, as we've talked about, has become much more important. Right. So now the full service agencies of today, they have a specialized group that are focused on interactive and digital. So you may have an interactive producer, developers, or interactive graphic artists. So again, people that are focused solely on everything digital and interactive. Production, of course, that's an important area within an agency because all those great, brilliant, creative ideas have to be produced so that consumers can actually see them. So it could be print production manager, broadcast production manager, and then there's typically this idea of a traffic manager. Think of that as a person who is responsible for making sure all the projects move smoothly through an agency and that deadlines are met, right? So a really important function within an agency. So if you're really detail oriented and you love this idea of process and following process, then a traffic manager could be a good area for you. Now, specialized services, whether it's direct marketing or sales promotion or public relations or events and support services, you would find those in a full service agency as well. Media, obviously very important, and typically in the world of agencies, this is the media department is made up of two areas of functional experts. You've got this idea of media planners who are responsible for understanding what the best media vehicles may be to meet a client's needs. Innovation becomes really important here, understanding what new innovative media vehicles are available. So you've got this idea of media planners who are looking for the best media vehicles. And then you've got media buyers who are responsible for negotiating with all those media developers and media organizations. And the media buyers are responsible for buying the media at the absolute lowest price possible for the advertiser. So two really distinctly different functions within the world of media. And then, of course, there's management and finance. So like you would see in all organizations, there's accountants and financial managers and office managers and human resources. So there you have it. The typical full service agency organization chart. And the one thing I want you guys to take away from this is just look at all those different job opportunities that are available, depending on where your areas of interest and expertise may lie. Now, agencies are vital in the world of integrated marketing communications, whether they're external agencies or internal agencies. Advertising agencies are still vital in this world of integrated marketing communications that we live in today. And here are kind of the 7 ways that agencies add value to a client's business. Certainly the development and production of creative ideas that are fresh and appropriate and appealing to consumers. So it starts with this idea of creativity. But number 2, ensuring that the agency disciplines and functions are integrated and that agency teams and divisions collaborate well on behalf of the client. It's called integrated marketing communications for a reason, and agencies need to ensure that they are integrating with other marketing service providers that a client may be working with, because the client is looking for that integrated marketing campaign, and they may be working with different agencies, and it's critically important that those agencies are collaborating with one another and working in conjunction with one another, which speaks to number 3. So working in a collaborative way with the client by creating an environment of low egos and high mutual respect. It's one of the things that you often hear about the top creative talent in advertising agencies is they have really big egos and they get really offended when the client may not like their ideas, and that typically doesn't, well, I know for a fact it doesn't go over well with clients. Clients don't respect agencies whose egos get in the way of developing the work that is needed for the client. Number 4, developing ideas and programs that can be integrated into multiple communication channels. So think of this as, what is the big idea that can be brought to life over multiple different media vehicles and communication channels. And that's actually the assignment that you guys have on this team project, is coming up with that big idea and then coming up with different executions of that big idea across various media vehicles or channels. So number 5, assigning its best people to the client's business and making its top executives available when needed. I remember the days when I was in the agency business where my client would be requesting the top creative, the top creative head of the agency to come to a meeting, or they would want the president of the advertising agency to be in a meeting. So oftentimes clients want to ensure that they're getting the minds of the top talent within an agency, and vice versa. That works the same for clients. Clients want to make sure they're getting the top talent from the agencies. That's certainly a way that clients or agencies add value to a client's business. Evaluating brand drivers, certainly like awareness and consideration and purchase intent. In today's world, marketers know that it's critically important to be able to evaluate the effectiveness of their advertising efforts, and they want to work for agencies who share in that responsibility, who share in that passion, and who share in the understanding of the importance of measuring the effectiveness of their advertising efforts. And then lastly, providing guidance and solutions in new media and technologies couldn't be more important than it is today. As more and more new media opportunities and technologies and innovation surface, it's really important that agencies stay abreast of that and to make their clients aware of the new opportunities that are in existence to engage with clients. So the different ways that agencies can add value to a client's business. Earlier we talked about, what will the agency of the future look like? What will be required of the agency of the future to be successful? And so it generally falls in these buckets, and always starting with accountability. So critically important today. Agencies have to be responsible for the outcomes, not just the outputs. They have to be responsible for ensuring that they're helping clients meet their marketing goals. This requires attention to understanding the success metrics and not just looking at the cost of service, but understanding what does success look like. And then certainly measuring what matters. And typically what matters are the results for the clients. What are the results that the clients are looking for? And that's what the agency should be measuring. So accountability followed by agility, right? Because the world we live in is changing so rapidly, Agencies have to be agile, and they have to be able to prototype and come up with minimal viable products, or they have to have interdisciplinary teams working together with one another versus kind of the old traditional department approach where departments don't necessarily speak with each other. So this idea of agility is becoming important for the agency of the future. Obviously, collaboration. So a culture that values collaboration versus just managing the hours or managing money. Teams of givers, not takers, and agency partners as peaceful competitors, right? Because in today's world, when a client is working with multiple different marketing services organizations, it's critically important that those different agencies work together in a collaborative spirit versus a competitive spirit. And that's easier said than done, but it's critically important for the agency of the future. Obviously, digital fitness. Hiring people with high digital IQ. Digital as a competency across the agency, not just a department. Making sure all the departments within an agency understand digital and the impact it's having in today's marketing world. A deep understanding of data and personalization. I mean, we know how important big data is, and analytics is, and personalization and artificial intelligence. All those things are really important. So the agency of the future has to be fit in this world of digital. And obviously, effectiveness, thinking about yourself, your agency as a provider of solutions, not services. And I really love this. As a matter of fact, I think it should be marketing solutions firms versus marketing services firms. Because at the end of the day, clients are looking for solutions, not just services. Obviously, true product management from start to finish. And then a focus on effectiveness for the clients, right? Not just efficiency for the agency. Other things that are going to be critically important for the agency, the successful agencies of the future, certainly this area of expertise. So knowledge of specific markets or audiences, right? Being best in class business model versus just a full service agency. We like this idea of business model. And then having centers of excellence and best practices, right? So a full service agency, as we looked at that previous organizational structure, they've got to have areas of expertise, right? And centers of excellence. And being able to deliver best in class practices for clients. So expertise will continue to be critically important. But there's innovation, right? So, being attuned to innovation and creating innovation, having revenue streams from intellectual property, not just work for hire, right? So that's going to be important for agencies of the future. Creating innovation, right? And turning that innovation into intellectual property. Maybe having labs as independent business units. So labs where they're trying out new methods or new avenues to reach and engage consumers. Certainly using all the technology that is available to us today. A marketing invention business, not just a service business. Again, it's back to that idea of solutions and making sure that innovation is a ongoing part of the solutions that you're bringing to your client. And lastly, pricing. Pricing is a core competency versus costing. This idea of delivering value to your clients so that they don't look at paying you as a cost, but they look at paying you as a value, right? Aligning the economic incentives of both the client and the agency. This has become critically important, right? Oftentimes today, clients are paying agencies based on the results that the agencies actually deliver for the client, right? So it kind of goes back to that idea of accountability and aligning your pricing model, your compensation model to that of what the client is looking to achieve. And then kind of this idea of professional sellers negotiating with professional buyers. For the bigger organizations like Coca-Cola, they have a department, a small department of 2 to 3 people whose sole responsibility is to negotiate with the agencies and to constantly evaluate the performance of those agencies and to create the authorized or the official rosters of agencies that can actually be used within that big firm like Coca-Cola. So understanding that you've got professional buyers out there and you need to have professional sellers that are negotiating with those professional buyers. So just the things that are going to be really important for the successful agency of the future. So again, a short overview of Chapter 3. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this video that the essay questions in the first exam are going to come from this chapter. And in fact, here are the 2 options. So you're going to pick one of these essay questions to answer it, right? The first one is all about discussing how math men have overtaken madmen, which we covered in this video. And then the other option is discussing who are the various participants in the integrated marketing communications process. So hopefully you paid attention to this video, and you're going to see these questions again come your first exam, and you should be much better prepared now to answer those questions. So that's it for Chapter 3. Thanks for your attention. We'll talk soon.